Hi, thank you to everybody who took the time to watch, comment on, and share the last video that I made. It was really encouraging to see that so many people are similarly concerned about these issues and take these things very seriously. There was one commenter that expressed some skepticism and asked if I had any proof of the claims that I'm making. And I actually appreciated this comment because why should you take my word for it? So I wanted to make a quick video and show you some documentation from the program of how the school creates an overt culture of far left social justice ideology and what that looks like. I don't have any documentation from lecture material that was presented in the course that I talked about while I was talking in that last video, like the addressing model or the way that the teacher talked about white women, because that was said verbally. But I do have, and this might be a topic for another day, and maybe if you guys are interested, this book was my textbook for that course. It's called Counseling the Culturally Diverse by Daryl Wing Su. And I kept it just because I found it to be just so shockingly unempirical and unworthy of a graduate level course. It's just a bunch of racial stereotypes. And I honestly, in reading it, wondered if the author made up quite a bit of what he said just to suit his own argument, his own ideological bent. So, but that's a topic for another day. Right now, what I can show you is I've got up on my screen, and I'll share my screen with you here. So this, I've got several things to show you. These are some continuing education and different communications that we get from the school. I also have some emails from the chancellor and from the Justice Leadership Council that the school sends out, and as well as just some flyers. This just demonstrates the culture at the school that is, there's no viewpoint diversity. It's just social justice far left. So this is one piece, one document here. This is the most recent continuing education flyer. And just in this one, there's several pieces of really intense ideological, I don't know, propaganda. So here's clinical considerations when treating parents of gender diverse children. And this is being taught by a WPATH gender specialist. And WPATH is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. It's an extreme gender organization, so a trans activist organization. So that's who's teaching the counselors. Here's another little bit here: sexual health concerns that impact people with vulvas, not women, but people with vulvas. For assigned female at birth, AFAB, people with vulvas. Scrolling down, building capacity for social emotional learning. And social emotional learning is the program of teaching young children, like K through 12 children, the social justice stuff. So it's the identity politics, the gender, the race stuff. Using critical race theory to decolonize educational curriculum. And so this is all just in one flyer here. Let's scroll down. I think I've got another one here. So this is just a zooming in. This is what you get when you click on that critical race theory piece. Open that up. An Antioch University Professional Development Certificate. It's a training program, 3-hour, $125. It's a workshop. And this is what your learning outcomes are. Identify the basic tenets of critical race theory and reflect on its strengths and limitations in addressing the relationship between race, racism, power, and privilege. Understand the white-centered foundation of education. Practical steps towards decolonizing their practice, informed by a multicultural and social justice lens using CRT. Participants will develop an action plan integrating social justice and anti-racist practices. And whenever you see this word anti-racist, it doesn't mean not racist. It sounds like it does, but what it actually means is that according to critical race theory, we have had years and years of racism from whites, and that now it's time to turn the racism back on whites. So racism is racism from white people to other races, and anti-racism is racism towards white people from people of other races. So it's a retributive philosophy. So anytime you see that anti-racism, anti-racist, it means anti-white or anti-whiteness. Just some more highlights. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you right now. I will put these on a Substack. I just started a Substack, so I'll put all these documents up so you guys can take more time with them if you're interested in reading them in full. This is just a little bit of documentation here. Clinical considerations when treating parents of gender diverse children. This is what you get when you click on that link above in the flyer, taught by the WPATH specialist. And here, what I've highlighted, identify strategies and interventions for working with accepting/unaccepting parents and parents who are concerned about rapid onset adolescent gender dysphoria. This is not a program for supporting the parent and taking care of the parent's emotional and psychological needs and the stress of what they're going through. It's a program of helping the parents to come from this category of accepting into this category of, did I say accepting? Unaccepting into accepting. So we're wanting to get all parents to accept the child's social, physical, medical transition. And the way that you can know that, for one thing, it's the WPATH. So you can go and look them up and see what they're all about. That's what they are about. Another thing you can see here, she is a specialist in LGBTQ plus affirmative psychotherapy. And that affirmative piece means that if she's dealing with somebody who says that they are transgender or non-binary, gender non-conforming, she affirms them and encourages that part of their identity. She's there to help them on the path towards the steps to transition. She's not exploring with them what it means to be a whole person and where their feelings of gender dysphoria are coming from, et cetera, et cetera. It's the conclusion is already made by the time you go see her. You're moving towards trans. All right, so moving on. This one is another one that was on that flyer. And when you look at that title, it sounds pretty harmless at first. Intentional leadership, harnessing the power of values, self-care, and inclusivity. But this word inclusivity is a social justice keyword. And so you come down here and you see that in week 2, this is how it shows up here. Understanding how white-centered values show up at work. This session will demonstrate ways in which white-centered values explicitly and implicitly privilege whiteness and discriminates, I think that's poor grammar, against non-Western and non-white professional standards. And then here we have the addressing, the intersectional identities such as race, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, parent status, immigration status, et cetera. I don't know the parent status part, but that's those little keywords. So a little program on leadership that's actually about anti-whiteness. Here's another one that we received. This is back in 2021. They sent us this. How do we respond to the continuous murder of Black people by police officers? And it's a lot of stuff about white America. White America. You can see their bias here. We must always defend people at the expense of property and power, especially white property and power. We must condemn and hold accountable any force used against Black, poor, and less powerful people. That's interesting. Okay. Police abolition, you start to see this word. And so this program is really advocating for police abolition. We've seen that a number of times in their communications. Here is the way that the author of this particular article is identifying him or herself as a white, upper middle class, able-bodied, neurodivergent, mentally ill, gender nonconforming, but cis-passing individual. So this is the way that they are asking us to identify ourselves and for us to also identify our clients. These this is a good example of that addressing model. And we see it over and over again in communications from Antioch, where the person talks about themselves this way. The police were formed primarily to protect white men's interests and above all property. This is the racist history of policing, see? Let's go down here. Here we go about police abolition. Policing is a dirty job, but nobody's got to do it. So we should get rid of police, according to Antioch. Okay, here we go. Here's the necessary dialogue series. I think the other places are calling this a difficult dialogue series, but I don't know what the difference is. Created to provide a safe space for BIPOC students. So here we have the white identifying accountability group and the BIPOC affinity group. So there's that segregation of the two groups in order to protect the BIPOC people. This is what you would get if you clicked on the bit about people with vulvas. So it's for assigned female at birth people with vulvas. And what will you learn in this program that you'll spend $200 in 6 hours for? Well, you'll learn to describe the differences between gender identity, sexual orientation, gender expression, romantic orientation, and assigned gender at birth. Identify 3 sexual health diagnoses in the DSM-5 that impact assigned female at birth people with vulvas. Identify ways to provide inclusive care to assigned female at birth people with vulvas. Yeah, okay, interesting. And then you come down here and you see, this is the person teaching the course, Dr. Mia Fine. They/she is a white, queer, neurodivergent, disabled, introverted, nerdy, and relationship-oriented human. Again, there's that self-description that fits that addressing model that we talked about. Mia's clients tend to be people navigating sexual health concerns, eroticism, intimacy, kink, LGBTQIA+ genders/orientations/sexualities, desire discrepancy, and navigating multiple intimate relationships. So this is right here, this is what was promoted in my human sexuality course as well. It's sort of, they wanted to teach counselors that there is no preferred way to be sexual. The teacher gave an example of one of her clients that does scat films as pornography, and she supports him through this. So these are all to be celebrated and encouraged as long as it makes you happy. And that's one opinion, that's one way to look at it, I guess. This is just a recent communication from them, October 13th. And Introduction to Social Justice for New Antioch Students. The mission of the CMHC Clinical Mental Health Counseling Department is to help develop counselors who operate through a social justice lens. And social justice is that activist, anti-racist, breaking down gender norms lens. And I wish I had known this when I started this program or known what that meant. There it is. And here's just one more piece. This is November is Indigenous Peoples Month from the Justice Leadership Council. They're promoting critical race theory again. All right, moving on. Here is a communication from Student Resources on Trans Day of Remembrance. This is last year in November. We honor all the gender nonconforming and transgender individuals whose lives were lost due to acts of anti-transgender violence. This year was the deadliest on record. This year, at least 375 transgender and gender nonconforming folks have been killed globally. 96% of folks killed were BIPOC trans feminine folks who often experience trans misogynoir, like misogynoir, the intersections of transphobia, misogyny, and anti-Blackness or racism. See attached for 6 things you can do to support TGNC individuals. And so come here, this is what you would get when you click on that attachment. And a couple things to look at here under pronouns. If you are cisgender, not transgender, introduce your pronouns whenever you introduce yourself. Put your pronouns in your bio, in your email signatures, in your Zoom handle. This helps dismantle the idea that we know people's pronouns simply by how they look, and it creates a safe place for trans folks to share our pronouns too. I wrote an article on pronouns. If you want more of my opinion on this, it's published on the CTA site. I think I might go ahead and just put it on my Substack as well. I can't tell you how wrong I think this is here. Well, I can. If you read my article, you'll know. Degender everything. For example, if you work in medical fields, stop gendering your care. Reproductive care is reproductive care. People with uteruses are people with uteruses. Fight toxic masculinity. Trans folks are most often killed by cis men due to toxic masculinity. Countless cis men have brought home a trans woman and then beat her to death upon learning of her transness. Countless. You think really countless? This is that anti-masculinity thing. All right, so here is just one more thing I'll show you real quick. These, and I know I'm moving too fast for you to read these things. I still feel like the video is pretty long, even though I'm trying to make it short, but I can put these up for you to look over in more detail if you're interested. This is a message from the chancellor after George Floyd's death. And I just want you to notice the tone that he takes. There's no objectivity. This is blatantly politicizing this event and steering it in one direction. But while the laws have changed over our torturous history, he's talking about how the history of this country was very unfair to Black people. And he says, but while the laws have changed over our torturous history, culture has not kept up. Many still regard America as a white Christian nation in which others are not true citizens, but mere subjects and interlopers. This is what white privilege looks like. We condemn in the strongest possible terms the culture of racial supremacy, hate-filled racist ideology, and violent actions that are part of our historical legacy and still part of our culture. So, next one that I have up is, this was one that they sent out right after the Russia-Ukraine conflict started. So April 6th of this year. And just the tone of these emails, the last few weeks especially have been a time of accelerating horror on many scales, from Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24th and the passage of anti-LGBTQ and anti-reproductive freedom laws in states across the United States, to individual acts of hate-fueled violence, and of course the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, blah, blah. So just these strong political opinions. Now is the right time to move swiftly to decarbonize the world's economy and break once and for all the power of oil dictators while averting the worst effects of climate change. He's talking about a bill to ban CRT in schools. In Antioch's home state of Ohio, this bill aims to ban the teaching of divisive concepts and would stifle the teaching of America's history of slavery, the systemic oppression of Black people, and anything else that might be considered divisive. I think that bill was just about one way of teaching that, which is through the critical race lens. In Florida, Governor DeSantis recently signed the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, which enables parents to sue school districts for damages and injunctive relief if teachers mention the existence of LGBTQIA+ people, or if school counselors address the students' feelings about sexual orientation or identity. And what he's not saying here is that this bill only applies to young children. I think is it grade 3 and below, and it's not about homosexuality or LGBTQ, whatever. It is about sexuality, period. just keep the sex education out of the very young children's curriculum. So you see the slant though. This is he's rabble rousing here. He's acting as a demagogue. He wants to fire people up about things according to his interpretation of them. And here in this paragraph, he's blaming Trump for the Asian hate crimes that have increased, I guess, the attacks on Asian citizens, Asian American citizens, so that he's equating that to Trump, blaming that on him. This one is from June of this year, and it's about the Supreme Court's decision on Roe versus Wade. And I didn't even highlight it because the whole thing is just very opinionated, very overtly left-wing talking points. And again, I know I'm moving too fast for you to really read this at all. There wasn't much for me to highlight because the whole thing was so strong. I wrote to him. I sometimes do. Write back about these things. Here's one that we just got. This one's about renaming Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. And right away you can see he only sent out this little bitty bit of his writing. And then he attaches an essay that he got from something called Anti-Racism Daily. And that, again, you look at anti-racism, they're not hiding what this is. This is, you might as well have said below is an essay printed in Anti-White Daily, because that's what that means. And this woman has an opinion about Columbus Day versus Indigenous Peoples Day. She's totally entitled to her opinion. It's an interesting essay, but it is presenting, again, that one side. Y'all, even the names of the ships are likely false. The whole thing, our history is all misinformation and it's all wrong. Columbus Day itself is incredibly harmful, and disavowing it is a distinctive issue. We need to reject the whitewashed and glorified story of Columbus as a famed discoverer and acknowledge the harm he created to Native communities through his colonization. It's a nationally recognized holiday that glorifies our nation's history of oppression, enslavement, dispossession, and genocide against Indigenous communities. It's essential that as you move to honor Indigenous Peoples Day, your efforts go past today and into tomorrow. Renaming a holiday alone is insufficient. It's easy to acknowledge something one day a year, but far more necessary to center the voices and needs of Indigenous communities in all aspects of our life, of your life. And then I wrote to him about that one as well. Here's my response to that. This one we received back January of 2021 in response to the January 6th protests. And this is what the school told us about those protests. They said, white supremacy has existed and continues to exist in this country since before its inception, to the detriment of the lives and well-being of Black, Brown, and Indigenous peoples. The reprehensible events of January 6th represent the culmination of not only the last 4 years of white supremacist domination facilitated by the occupant of the White House, but of the previous 400 plus years of flourishing, unacknowledged race-based hatred in the United States. We will not stand for complicity, and we will not stand for silence on this issue. So the school will not stand for your silence on this issue. You must be an activist, and you must be an activist in the way that they want you to be. And you must see the previous administration, Donald Trump, as a white supremacist domination. That is what you must see, according to Antioch. White terrorists can storm the US Capitol. So this is when they first made those groups, those racist segregated groups. Racial and social justice, organize a difficult dialogue series, which will include a BIPOC only affinity and support group and a white identifying accountability group. So if you are a Black or Indigenous person of color, you deserve affinity and support. But if you're white, we need you to be accountable. Here's another one, statement on abortion rights. In short, the court is about to announce that a one-day-old single-cell zygote has rights that supersede the rights of the pregnant person on whom that zygote depends. And notice this pregnant person language, that they're moving more and more to degender everything, degender everything. Women, non-binary people, trans folks, and young girls will be forced to carry their pregnancies to term and to give birth. The injustice of forcing a woman to carry a pregnancy to term and deliver the unwanted child. Make no mistake, this decision will most harm Black people, people of color, Indigenous people, people with LGBTQ+ identities, those living with disabilities, and those living in poverty. The Supreme Court is about to send us back to the dark ages. And then he tells us that he has served on boards of a couple of different Planned Parenthoods. I also implore each of you to get involved in political races at all levels. Vote, get involved in campaigns, work on get out the vote efforts in your states and others. March and make noise. There are many peaceful marches being planned for this weekend. Find one in your community. He's telling you to get involved in politics, but you can see that he wants you to get inside on just one side of politics. He's talking about the makeup of the Supreme Court. It's a body lacking legitimacy, according to him. Here's his description of Donald Trump, a president who was twice impeached and who led an attempted coup against our democratic process. And this is very interesting here. Keep the faith. Please keep the faith. So are they admitting that this is a theology here? And make good trouble in your quest for social justice. Okay, so those are just a few examples. If you've made it all the way through, thank you. I know this is kind of long. I hope that these are interesting and help to illustrate the points that I was making in the previous video. We're seeing a complete takeover. This school, and I think that this is representative of what's happening throughout academia. I can really only speak for this school, but your conservative viewpoints aren't welcome here. I'm not saying that I'm conservative. In fact, I've said that I'm not, but we should be able to have a robust discussion in an academic institution that includes and welcomes all viewpoints. And we're absolutely not seeing that here. These examples go mostly to the culture at large of the school, but I did share with you a few of the continuing education events that are targeting counselors specifically, and I would be happy to show more documentation of stuff that's going on in my program that relates specifically to counselor training. So, but in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and stop this now, and if you want to find these, I will put up a link to my Substack where I will have these documents posted so you can look at them at your leisure. Thank you.